Welcome aboard Podcast Cruise, where every episode is a voyage into the unknown. Join us as we explore the depths of mystics, mediums, and the metaphysical. From extraordinary near-death experiences to the secrets of the universe, we uncover the mysteries that leave you questioning reality. No faces, no frills, just captivating stories and profound insights to stir your soul. So grab your favorite beverage or set your cruise control to the legal speed limit and journey with us beyond the veil, one episode at a time. Let's welcome our hosts, Jake Hart and Zara Moon, as they dive into captivating discussions and the mysteries that shape our world. You are listening to Podcast Cruise.
Welcome back to the deep dive. This time, we're looking at something I think we all think about these days, how to navigate these kind of increasingly challenging times. And you guys sent us some really interesting material for this one, like these channeled messages from angels. It's definitely a little different from our usual deep dives.
Yeah, this is this unique territory for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
But channeled messages are fascinating because they often reflect like the anxieties and the hopes of the time that they were created in.
hmm
So even if we can't definitively trace their origin, it gives us a little glimpse into how people have sought solace and meaning when things feel uncertain, which, I mean, let's face it, is something we can all probably relate to.
Totally. And we also have some background on the channel herself, Ann Tucker. She's described as a healer, a teacher, and she really focuses on spiritual growth, especially during times of challenge, like what we seem to be going through right now.
Yeah, that context is so important. It really adds another layer to these messages and kind of suggests that they might resonate with those who are looking for guidance, looking for comfort in a world that honestly is feeling increasingly chaotic. So let's dive into what these messages say about coping with difficult times, and maybe most importantly, what they might mean for you.
Let's get into it.
Yeah.
The messages start off. They paint a very vivid picture of our current reality, describing it as a karmic world filled with lack, suffering, and contrast. I have to admit, that's a pretty intense way to start things off. What do you make of that word, karmic?
Oh, that's a great question. The term karma is often misunderstood. It's not about punishment, but more about cause and effect. You know what I mean? Like in this context. It seems to suggest that the challenges we're facing are a result of past actions, both individually but also collectively. It's like we're being asked to face the consequences of choices made, patterns repeated, systems that just don't work anymore.
So it's not about feeling guilty or blaming ourselves, but more about recognizing that our actions have consequences. And maybe those consequences are playing out on a global scale right now.
Exactly. And the messages emphasize that these challenges, they're not meant to break us. They're meant to help us learn, to evolve. They actually compare it to like being in an intense earth school where we're all working through this really, really dense textbook of karma.
An Earth school.
Yeah.
I love that analogy. It really highlights this idea that we're here to learn and grow, even if the lessons are tough.
Totally, totally. And they use another really powerful analogy, the frog in the boiling pot. Have you ever heard of that one?
Of course. It's
Wow.
about how gradual change can be so subtle that we don't even notice it until it's too late.
Right, exactly. And in this case, they're using it to illustrate how the chaos, the polarization that we see all around us, it's been steadily increasing. It's almost like a pot slowly coming to a boil. And they say this is building to like a crescendo of intensity before a major shift happens.
Okay, now we're getting to the really intriguing part.
But the messages talk about this flash of light, like a major event that's going to usher in a new era of unity consciousness. They even use these really vivid descriptions, like an influx of rainbow starlight and dormant DNA activation. It's not your average news headline.
Definitely not.
What do you think is going on here?
Well, it's certainly evocative language, isn't it?
Yeah.
The flash of light seems to represent a massive shift in consciousness, like a break from the old paradigm of separation and lack. But it's not just something that happens to us, you know?
Right.
The messages say we have a choice to make. During this transition, we can cling to the old ways or we can embrace the new. It's like we're at a crossroads and we have to choose which path to take.
And this new path, the new reality that they describe, it sounds pretty incredible. A world of abundance, joy, and collaborative creation, where we're actually able to manifest our desires in harmony with the earth and with each other. What stands out to you about this vision of the future? Well, what I find so fascinating is the shift in values they describe. It's not just about like material abundance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's about a fundamental shift in how we relate to ourselves, to each other, and to the planet. Like one really striking example they give is the idea of money becoming irrelevant. They suggest that in a world where we can manifest our needs directly, money simply won't be necessary.
Wait, hold on. No more money. That's a big one. It makes you wonder, like, what else might become obsolete in that kind of world? What would that even look like? No more jobs, no more economies as we know them.
It definitely challenges our current way of thinking
Yeah.
about value and exchange. I mean, if we didn't need to worry about basic survival, how would we spend our time? What would be our priorities? What would motivate us to create and contribute? These are the kinds of questions that the messages are inviting us to really contemplate.
That is a huge mind shift. It's like they're asking us to imagine a world beyond scarcity, beyond the limitations of the systems that we've always known. But they also acknowledge that the path to this new reality, well, it's probably going to involve some more turmoil, some unsettling events, right?
Yeah, they're very upfront about that. They talk about the world needing to kind of right itself,
Mm-hmm.
suggesting that there will be a period of upheaval, a period of adjustment as the old structures kind of crumble and new ones emerge.
That sounds pretty intense. What kind of challenges are they talking about?
Well, they mentioned potential turmoil of a physical kind, upsetting news that could create distance between people. There's even reference to the anticipation of greater war and separation among nations.
That's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
So how do they suggest we navigate all of this? What can we actually do when we're faced with challenges that seem so immense?
One of the most important pieces of advice they offer is to really focus on cultivating inner peace. In the midst of all the external chaos, they have this beautiful line, interpose upon the landscape of turmoil, your own suggestive fragrance of peace.
That is so powerful. It's like a reminder that we have the power to choose our inner state, even when the world around us feels totally chaotic. But how do we actually do that? Like, what are the steps to cultivate that kind of inner peace?
Well, they talk about the importance of self-awareness, recognizing our triggers, processing emotions like fear and grief, and really resisting the urge to get swept up in the negativity that's all around us.
That makes sense. If we can understand our own reactions, our patterns, we're less likely to get caught in those spirals of fear and anxiety. But what about when those emotions just feel completely overwhelming? How do we deal with that?
They offer a really simple but really powerful technique. Allow yourself to fully feel an emotion for 90 seconds, and then let it go.
Just 90 seconds. That seems almost too simple. Does that actually work?
Well, Anne explains that emotions tend to dissipate naturally when we just give them space to move through us, without judgment, without resistance. It's like acknowledging a wave without trying to fight it. You ever tried anything like that?
You know, I have. It's surprising how effective it can be. When you really allow yourself to feel an emotion fully, it often just loses its grip on you.
Exactly. It's not about suppressing, it's not about ignoring our feelings, but about giving them the space they need to flow through us. And that's just one of the tools that they offer for navigating these challenging times.
This is already giving me a lot to think about. Before we go any further, I'd love to hear what's resonating most with you so far, what's standing out to you personally.
What strikes me the most is the emphasis on choice. Even though these messages describe these huge, massive shifts happening in the world, they also remind us that we have the power to choose how we respond, how we participate, how we create our own reality within this larger context.
That is so empowering. It's not about being passive observers. It's about actively engaging with these changes and shaping our own experience. It feels like there's a lot more to explore here, especially when it comes to the practical side of navigating this transition. Yeah, it feels like we're being called to step up, you know what I mean? To become more conscious and intentional in our choices, in our actions. But before we get too far ahead, let's go back to something else that really struck me in the messages. They talk about this like element of surprise that's on the horizon, something that might involve the upsetting of things that we rely upon. That sounds a little ominous, to be honest.
It definitely piques the curiosity, right? They don't reveal exactly what this element of surprise might be, but they hint at some pretty major disruptions, maybe even on like a global scale. They specifically mention potential turmoil of a physical kind, upsetting news that could distance people from one another. There's even a reference to the anticipation of greater war and separation among nations.
It's pretty unsettling. It's like they're not sugarcoating the challenges that we might face. It makes me think about all the things that we take for granted in our daily lives. What if those things were suddenly disrupted or taken away?
Yeah. It's a sobering thought, isn't it? It challenges us to think about what's truly essential, what we would value most if our lives were turned upside down.
Yeah.
and it connects to something else that the messages discuss this potential for an economic unfurling that they actually describe as disastrous.
I remember that they seem to be hinting at a major economic shift, maybe even a collapse of the systems that we rely on. It's interesting because this aligns with some of the anxieties that people are already feeling about the economy, like concerns about job security, inflation, the overall stability of the financial system.
Totally. It definitely taps into like a collective fear that
Yeah,
many of us are carrying around.
for sure.
And it's understandable to feel anxious, when faced with so much uncertainty. But the messages offer a different perspective on how to approach those fears. They acknowledge that it's natural for humans to crave certainty, especially when it comes to our basic needs, the well-being of our loved ones.
Right.
But they suggest that this fear-based approach, this constant need to prepare and stockpile it, actually prolongs our suffering.
So instead of trying to control and predict the future, they're encouraging us to shift our perspective. But how do we do that when we have such real and tangible concerns about like basic survival?
Well, they remind us that even in the most challenging situations, there's always a gift. There's an opportunity for growth. There's a chance to connect more deeply with our own souls and with each other. And they emphasize that we are never truly alone,
Yeah.
that there are these unseen forces of love and support always surrounding us.
That's a really beautiful and comforting thought, but how does that translate into practical action? What can we actually do to shift our perspective from fear to trust, especially when things feel so uncertain?
They encourage us to focus on what we can control, our inner state, our choices, our actions. They remind us that we have the power to cultivate inner peace, to choose love over fear, to focus on the good that's always present, even amidst the challenges.
That sounds a lot like the idea of interposing upon the landscape of turmoil, your own suggestive fragrance of peace that we talked about earlier. It's about choosing to create an inner sanctuary of peace and stability, even when the outer world feels chaotic.
Precisely. And they suggest that as we shift our focus, from external circumstances to our internal state, our fears about scarcity and lack will begin to dissolve. They even go so far as to say that in this new reality, that need for certainty and constant preparation will fade away because we'll have a deeper understanding of our own power to manifest what we need.
They actually say that we will no longer desire things that are toxic and against the human condition. That's a pretty bold statement.
Oh.
What do you think they mean by toxic desires?
That's an intriguing question, isn't it? It makes me think about all the things we're conditioned to want in our current society. Material possessions, status power over others. Could it be that these desires are actually rooted in a sense of lack, a belief that we're not enough as we are?
That's deep. It makes you wonder if those desires would naturally fall away if we truly believed in our own inherent worth and our ability to create abundance in our lives. What would it look like to live in a world where people weren't driven by those kinds of desires?
Well, the messages paint a picture of a world where people are motivated by a magnanimous spirit, a spirit of generosity, forgiveness, courage, nobility. It's a world where we're guided by a deep sense of interconnectedness and a desire to serve the well-being of all, including the earth itself. It's a beautiful vision,
For sure.
but it requires a pretty radical shift in consciousness,
Yeah.
both individually and collectively.
So how do we even begin to make that shift? Is it just about changing our thoughts and our beliefs, or is there something more to it?
Well, they suggest that this shift is not just about thinking differently, but about embodying a new way of being. It's about aligning our thoughts, our feelings, our actions with the energy of love, peace, and abundance. And they offer specific practices that can help us do this, like cultivating self-awareness, connecting with our intuition, practicing gratitude and compassion.
So it's not just about waiting for the flash of light to happen, but about actively cultivating the qualities of the new reality within ourselves right now.
Exactly. They're inviting us to become pioneers of this new consciousness, to embody the change we want to see in the world. They even say that in this new reality, we'll be abundantly expressive in all ways, suggesting a flowering of creativity and self-expression that will be unlike anything we've ever experienced before.
Right. They mention specific examples like healing arts, storytelling, artistic endeavors, even architecture. It makes me think about all the creative potential that's lying dormant within each of us, just waiting to be unleashed in this new world.
It's a beautiful thought, isn't it? To imagine a world where our true purpose is to create, to express, to share our unique gifts with the world in a way that uplifts and inspires everyone.
That's such a different way of thinking about work and purpose than what we're used to in our current society. What do you think would have to change for us to fully embrace that kind of creative expression?
They suggest that this shift will require us to release old patterns of thinking, that are rooted in lack and scarcity. It's about moving beyond the idea of competition and embracing the power of collaboration.
Okay.
They describe a world where we're all working together, supporting each other's growth, and celebrating each other's successes.
Hmm. That sounds like a pretty radical shift from the every man for himself mentality that often dominates our current world. But they do acknowledge that this transition won't be a smooth, linear process, right?
Yeah, they're very clear about that. They talk about the world needing to kind of right itself,
Mm.
suggesting a period of upheaval and adjustment as the old structures crumble and new ones emerge. It's like watching a boat that's been turned upside down, slowly righting itself, a process that involves some inevitable rocking and churning. And they even mention that we might experience moments of disconcerting news and a need to yield to an element of surprise, suggesting that even as we move toward this new reality, there may be unexpected twists and turns along the way.
That's a good reminder to stay flexible and open to the unknown. But it also raises the question of how to prepare for those unexpected challenges. Do they offer any guidance on how to navigate those moments of uncertainty and upheaval?
One of the most important pieces of advice they offer is to trust the process even when it feels uncomfortable or uncertain.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
they assure us that the skills and knowledge we need will come into presence as we move forward, suggesting that the journey itself will be a process of learning and discovery.
So it's not about trying to figure everything out in advance, but about trusting that we'll be guided and supported along the way.
Exactly. They also encourage us to pay attention to what they call decision points, those moments where we feel a pull towards something new, something that aligns with our evolving desires and our expanding sense of purpose.
Okay.
They say that these decision points will feel different from the desires we've experienced in the past, that they'll emerge from a place of inner harmony and self-love rather than from a sense of lack or striving.
It sounds like they're encouraging us to really tune into our intuition, to listen to that inner voice that knows what's best for us.
Yes, and they suggest that our intuition will become our guide, leading us toward choices that are aligned with our highest good and the well-being of all. They also remind us that in this new reality, we won't be alone. We'll be surrounded by others who are also awakening to their true potential, and together we'll co-create a world that reflects the beauty and abundance of our collective consciousness.
That's such an inspiring vision. It's
Mhm.
a reminder that even amidst the challenges, there's a powerful shift underway, and we have the opportunity to participate in creating a future that's filled with love, joy, and abundance for all.
It's a future worth striving for, isn't it?
Absolutely. But before we get too caught up in the excitement of this new reality, let's come back to the present moment for a second. They do talk about some pretty intense challenges that we might face in this transition. Do they offer any specific guidance on how to navigate those difficulties?
One of the most practical pieces of advice they offer is to focus on cultivating that suggestive fragrance of peace we talked about earlier. They remind us that we have the power to choose our inner state, regardless of what's happening in the outer world.
That sounds great in theory, but it can be hard to stay centered and peaceful when things are feeling chaotic and uncertain. What are some practical ways to cultivate that inner peace amidst the storms?
Yeah, it feels like we're being asked to build an ark,
Mhm.
before the storm hits. But instead of gathering supplies, we're cultivating inner strength and resilience. That's a great way to put it. It's about building our inner resources so we can weather whatever storms come our way. And they offer some really specific advice on how to do that. Remember that phrase, be within the hearing of your own whispers and languish, not in what is external. It's all about turning inward and connecting with our own inner guidance, finding that wellspring of peace within ourselves, no matter what's happening around us.
Yeah, it sounds like a practice of coming home to ourselves,
Yeah.
finding that center point within, but sometimes it's hard to even hear those whispers, let alone trust them.
Yeah.
What are some practical ways to access that inner guidance?
Remember how Anne mentioned the power of simply feeling our feelings fully, just for 90 seconds and then letting them go.
Right.
It's about acknowledging and processing our emotions rather than suppressing them or getting stuck in them. It's like creating space for those emotions to move through us,
Yeah.
like waves crashing on a shore.
Yeah, it sounds simple, but I can imagine it takes practice and courage to really allow ourselves to feel those waves, especially the uncomfortable ones.
Absolutely. It's not always easy, but it's a powerful practice. And Anne also talked about using tools like dream analysis and astrology to gain deeper insights into ourselves and our journeys.
Right. Those can be fascinating tools for self-discovery, can't they? I've
Yeah.
dabbled in both, and it's always amazing how those practices can reveal patterns and beliefs that we might not even be consciously aware of.
Exactly. It's about becoming more conscious of the forces that are shaping our thoughts, our feelings, our actions. And the messages also emphasize the importance of community, connecting with others who are also on a path of awakening and seeking to build a more harmonious world. They talk about how in this new reality, our sense of separation will dissolve and we'll experience a much deeper sense of unity and interconnectedness.
It's like that idea of Ubuntu, the African philosophy that emphasizes our interconnectedness and our shared humanity.
Yes, exactly. And they even suggest that we'll be able to feel each other's emotions and desires,
Yeah.
leading to a much more harmonious and collaborative way of living. Imagine a world where we could truly empathize with each other's experiences and work together for the collective good.
That would be a profound shift. But even as we move towards this new reality, the messages don't shy away from the challenges we might encounter. They talk about disconcerting news, upsetting events, and a need to yield to an element of surprise. It sounds like they're preparing us for some potentially difficult times ahead.
They're definitely honest about the potential for upheaval and disruption. They talk about the rigidity of this world crumbling and emphasize that the structures we've relied upon are no longer serving the evolving needs of humanity and the Earth.
It's like they're saying that the old systems are breaking down to make space for something new and better, something more aligned with this emerging consciousness of unity and abundance.
And in the face of this breakdown, they offer this really powerful reminder. Be not that soul who suffers what is. Be the soul who creates what becomes. It's a call to action, an invitation to step into our power as co-creators of our reality.
So instead of being passive victims of circumstance, we can choose to be active participants in shaping the future. But sometimes it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the enormity of these challenges. What can we as individuals do to make a difference?
Well, they remind us that even small acts of kindness, compassion, and courage can have a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Every time we choose love over fear, every time we extend a helping hand, every time we speak up for what's right, we're contributing to the creation of a more beautiful world.
It's a reminder that our actions, no matter how small they do, matter, and that we have the power to be agents of change even amidst all the uncertainty and the upheaval.
Exactly. And they also emphasize the importance of trusting the process even when it feels messy or unpredictable. They assure us that we're not alone in this journey, that there are unseen forces guiding and supporting us every step of the way.
This has been an incredibly thought-provoking deep dive. It's a lot to take in, but it also feels incredibly hopeful. What are you taking away from this exploration?
For me, the most important message is about remembering our power. We're not just passive observers in this unfolding story. We're active participants, and our choices, both big and small, are shaping the future. And even though the path ahead may be uncertain, we have the inner resources and the support we need to navigate it with grace, courage, and an open heart.
That's such a beautiful reminder. And remember that powerful image of like shaking off those heavy emotions and those limiting beliefs that no longer serve us. We can choose to align with the energy of love, peace, and abundance, even amidst the challenges.
It's a journey of transformation both individually and collectively. And as the angel messages suggest, it's a journey that ultimately leads us toward a world of greater love, joy, and abundance for all.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's giving you some food for thought and some inspiration to navigate these changing times with a renewed sense of hope and purpose. Until next time, keep seeking, keep growing, and keep creating the world you want to see.
Thank you for cruising with us on Podcast Cruise. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us bring you more intriguing and thought-provoking podcasts. Stay curious, and we'll see you on the next adventure.